we're fibbing a little bit. As of yesterday, I think it was officially 5 weeks to the Canes getting underway. But we're counting it as if today. 5 weeks, right? We're rounding.
Yesterday, 5 weeks from yesterday is the first preseason game.
Exactly. So we thought we'd use that word 5, that number 5, and count down the 5 biggest stories of the Canes offseason thus far. And actually, I'm going to say this. Outside of one that is on our list that could still be resolved, I wouldn't hate a quiet rest of the offseason for the Canes, right? You've had your fireworks already. Aside from one, you can use one more firework. But if this is the biggest stories at the end of the offseason, I will be very happy. Number 5, it's the end of an era on the defensive side of the ice.
Yeah.
Pesce and Shea are gone. They're gone. They made a lot of money in free agency.
Sure.
But they're gone. And kind of this ramping up, this 6 years of building into being one of the contenders, they were there, right? They were in the mix. They were making memorable plays. They were getting hurt occasionally. They were doing it all. Obviously Pesce especially, but Shea as well really entrenched themselves in kind of the Rod brind'amour coaching era of the Carolina Hurricanes. And them not being there is going to be weird, right?
Especially Pesce, because he's spent his whole career here.
Him more so than Shea, but still, like both of them, when things got a little chaotic and then you saw one of them, start their shift, you were just kind of like, oh, good. All right. We're going to be fine for, at least a minute here, right? Everybody collect themselves because you just had a steady Eddie presence out there. So they're no longer around and it's a torch passing, whether it's a guy like Chatfield, whether it's, eventually Necas, whether it's, one of the new free agents they brought in this year. It's going to be different. Number 4, Seth Jarvis looking for a long-term contract.
Yeah.
This is the one you feel free to solve in the next 5 weeks. Well before that. That's really the last thing on the to-do list. I think it could become one of maybe 3 or 2 as far as stories of the offseason the longer it draws out, because there's really nothing else to talk about, right? By this point, if you're a huge Canes fan and you need something to talk about with your Canes fan friends, there's really not much else to talk about other than Seth Jarvis's contract right now. Eventually, you'll get into like what you think the lines should be, what pairings should be paired together, and that. But that's not for now. That's for training camp. Now it's just Seth Jarvis. Every day I walk into the office, Paul Ihander is getting ready for Next Up, and I walk by his office. I say, morning. He says, yo. Then I say, Seth Jarvis get a new contract? And he goes, no. And then I sit down at my desk and we go about our day.
Yeah. When I walk in, I go, we signed Seth Jarvis yet? Nope. Okay.
It's become routine. So that's number 4. Third biggest story of the offseason thus far for the Canes. This feels like forever ago. Rod brind'amour got the 5-year deal, the contract, sticking around with the Canes. It weirdly lasted into the offseason. Not many of us thought it would, but it did. And then he had his extension, and it was obviously a rejoiceful moment. And then, immediately after that, there was the Don Waddell resignation, and it all kind of...
Yeah, that was weird.
There was a lot of strange things happening. But the Rod brind'amour extension made the Don Waddell resignation, I think, less worrisome, because you're like, hey, there's at least one of the cornerstones that has been here for the Rise that isn't going anywhere, and Tom Dundon made sure of it with the extension. So if some shuffling elsewhere happens, that's going to be okay. 2, this is how I know the Carolina Hurricanes fans, right? It's been 25 plus years of Hurricanes hockey here in the Triangle. This is how I know they're becoming like generational fans. Like you're starting to build the type of, or not starting to, you have already built the fans that are, right? Like I'm going to suffer through stuff just because my parents were fans and they suffered through it. And I'm going to, celebrate because you're a full-fledged fan base when this happens. You have an off season with some good news, right? You have beloved players. But you hate the players who you feel have wronged your franchise. There's two things I hear a lot about when it comes to the Canes talking with fans this offseason. One, are we going to be good next year? Fair question to ask. Two, I hate Jake Guentzel.
Jake Guentzel is just a jackwagon.
Exactly. Well said by our numbers game player a couple of weeks ago. Jake Guentzel, the way he handled his pending free agency, the way it seemed like he wanted to come back, the way it was painted to us with the Canes going up to match the number he was asking for in a long-term contract and him still electing to leave, the manner in which he left, people hate Jake Guentzel, man. And when he comes back to PNC, it's not going to be a lot of, hey, way to go, glad to have you backs. Not going to be that.
Jake Guentzel is just a jackwagon.
And I think that's a mark of a good fan base. When you play for us, we love you. You do anything to mess us over, you're dead to me.
Like, we showed you nothing but love, respect, care. We wanted you here.
We put you on the first line. We gave you all the juicy opportunities that Sebastian Aho creates.
Yes.
And this is what you do with it?
And this is what you did.
We had Seth Jarvis working on the stall line out there doing everything he possibly could for point production. Meanwhile, you had it cushy on the first line, and this is how you treat us?
We had agreed upon a deal. 8 years.
You gave us the number and we reached it.
And we did. He said, hey, we need this. Hey, oh, okay, we got you.
Wasn't fast enough for you, Jakey?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Sorry we, thought out our move and took our time to make sure it was good for the franchise.
I hope you're hot and sweaty right now when we have gorgeous days like this.
Yeah, exactly. I hope you're in Tampa traffic right now.
Yeah.
Jake Guentzel is just a jackwagon.
I hope Tampa blames you for their captain not being on the team anymore.
Right? Yeah, try to replace the legend in Stamkos.
There you go.
Yeah, have fun doing that.
You'll never be Stamkos.
You'll never be.
That's number two. The biggest story of the Canes offseason thus far, the Martin Necas rumors. He was going he was going to Boston. He was going to Ottawa. He was going to Columbus. He was going to, I could go on it. Chicago. He was going to Columbus again. He was going to this team, that team, the other team. He was going to sign an offer sheet. He was not going to sign an offer sheet. His dad wants him to play center. His dad wants him on the first team power play. It was a roller coaster of an offseason, and it ended with him signing a 2-year deal pre-arbitration. So that one's not technically over, but it's kind of over for this offseason, I think. Now get Seth Jarvis done.